G'day so-and-sos, welcome to our sewing room. My name is Kathy. My sleepy furry little friend up there is Lucy Purr, and this is the bag that we're going to be making this week. So it's a nice little grocery bag. Now I have done this video and I designed the bag with the absolute beginner in mind. So if you haven't made a bag before, or if you've never made anything at all before, this is the video for you because I'm going to take it nice and slow and show you step by step. Now, if you're a more experienced sewer and you'd like to make this along with me, then you're going to find it really easy and you'll be able to, and I've time-stamped it, so you'll be able to sort of watch what I do and then be able to do it and skip ahead to the next bit as I take it a little bit slower for others. But this bag is very cute. We have got some webbing straps, so we don't have to make straps, which is nice. And then we've got a slip pocket, front and back. So we've got plenty of room for our keys and purse and whatever. And then it's lined on the inside. So it's quite pretty and it looks very finished. And then we have French seams on the side. And then I've boxed the corners on the bottom, but we've French seamed those as well. So we've got a nice wide base to it and it's going to be super strong with those French seams. If you don't know what French seams are, don't worry because I'm going to teach you. Okay, guys, we are ready to get going, so let's get cracking. Let's have a look at what we need. So, as always, my cutting mat, acrylic rulers, rotary cutter, scissors, and snippers. Today I'll be using both pins and clips, but I've also got some double-sided sticky tape just in lieu of some of the pins because it'll be a little bit quicker for me while I'm filming and my pin work sucks, but you'll be able to make do with just pins if you don't have any. Then I've got my chalk and I've got my little purple thing, even though this one's blue. Now, if you don't have one, you'll be fine without one. It's just a sewing stiletto that I help to poke at the corners and whatever and use at the sewing machine. You'll see what I mean. Then I've got my fabrics. Now, all of this will be listed in the description box as always, so don't worry if you don't follow. It'll all be there that you can print out and copy, whatever. Okay, so I've got my two straps and these are 40 inches by 1 inch, two of those. And then for the outside fabric, I'm using a cotton drill. Now it's just a little bit heavier than normal quilting cotton and a little bit more durable. My slip pockets, I have two of those and they are 10 by 9 inches. And I'd really recommend that you do find one or use one that is the same color. It doesn't have a print on it. And you'll see why a bit later on. And then for the base, it is 12 by 16.5 inches and same fabric I've used as my slip pockets. And then the outside is 35 by 16.5. And for this piece, it's fine, obviously, to have a patterned fabric, which is watermelons and very cute. And then I have my lining piece. Now for my lining fabric, I'm using a lighter quilting cotton. And this piece is a little bit smaller. It is 32 by 16.5 inches. Too easy. Let's get started. So I've got my slip pockets and my exterior piece and we'll work on these. So what I'm going to do is have one of my slip pockets in front of me and I'm going to orientate it so the 10-inch side is going up that way and the 9-inch is that way. Now I'm going to work out which is the right side of my fabric. Now the right side, if you haven't heard that term before, the right side of your fabric is the pretty side. So with my watermelon fabric, it would be the side with the watermelons. And then the wrong side of the fabric is the backing. With this one being the same color, obviously it's a little bit more difficult to tell. So I'm going to feel it and the back will feel just a little bit rougher. But if you can't tell, then don't worry, no one else is going to be able to tell. So I think this is my right side, which is what I want. So I'm going to measure up one of these short edges, so the 9-inch length. I'm going to measure up 1/2 inch and give myself a chalk line. Then from that 1/2 inch line, I'm going to measure another 1 inch. So I'm now 1.5 inches from the edge of my fabric, and give myself a line. And then I will do that to this piece as well. So I think that's the right side. That's the side that I want to be working on. 1/2 inch from one of the 9-inch sides. And then from that line, another 1 inch, like that. Then I can pop them to one side. Now I've got my main piece. So what I'm going to do is fold this in half lengthways, so along the long bit, like, good try, Kathy, like that. Right, yeah, okay, there we go. And line up those short edges like that. And then smooth that down, make sure it's all nice and even. And then out of these bottom folded corners, I'm going to just snip into my fabric a tiny little bit to mark my centers. That'll come in handy later on. Okay, now open it up. And we're going to do the same thing, except this time I'm going to work on the wrong side of my fabric, so the backing of it. And I'll grab my long ruler for this bit, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. 1/2 inch, and then from that line, 1 inch. So line up my ruler, 1/2 inch, give myself a chalk line, and then from that 1/2 inch line, measure another inch up and give myself a line. And then same thing on the other end. Spin him round, grab my ruler, 1/2 inch, and then from that line, another inch. Pretty easy so far, right? And 1 inch from there, like that. Now I will get my iron ready. So before I start ironing, you might notice that I've put my cutting mat away. That's because cutting mats absorb heat. And if I iron over it, which I'm lazy and I do all the time and I shouldn't, but if you iron on top of it, even with one of these wool mats, it will get hot and it will buckle. And then once they're buckled, they're ruined. So yeah, I've got to stop being lazy and actually do the right thing and pop it away while I'm ironing. So what I'm going to do is fold up my fabric at that 1/2 inch line and iron that down like that. Give it a good hit with the iron. And then, if you haven't guessed, we're going to fold it again at that 1 inch line like that. And give that a hit with the iron. And we're going to do exactly the same thing with the other piece and then with our exterior fabric. The only difference is that our pockets, we've only done it on one side. So while I'm ironing, I'm just going to talk away. So some of you guys emailed me and messaged me and asked me how my holiday went, because I'd taken a few weeks off and I'd planned to go out west. But due to a series of unfortunate events, that didn't really happen. We didn't get to go on our sort of long road trip that we had planned, but we did get to go down the coast for a few days, a couple of times, which was lovely because it's whale season. And then that 1 inch mark, fold it down there. So it was, yeah, absolutely beautiful to wake up in the morning and sit on the balcony and watch the dolphins playing in the shallows as they were feeding, which was very cool. And then the whales were a bit further out, which was just amazing to be able to sit there and watch them do that. And then we drove a little bit further up the coast and we saw seals, and then there was more whales, like a heap more whales, where the seals were. And then I saw a shark. Like I'm sitting there all relaxed, watching the seals play and the dolphins and everything else, the whales, I mean. And then I saw a big shark jump out of the water. It must have been chasing a seal or something like that. And terrified. Wonderful. terrified. And then we drove like back down the beach and Adrian was like, oh, we should go for a swim. I'm like, no, dude, you can go in the water, but I am not going in the water because sharks live in the water and they don't come on land, so I'm not going in the water. No way. No way. But he grew up surfing, so he was a surfer boy when he was a kid, so he's not afraid of sharks. I don't know why. But yeah, I had an uncle that let me watch Jaws when I was about 7 years old. And yeah, that sort of ruined the ocean for me, unfortunately. Well, not ruined the ocean because I like to go and be at the ocean and walk on the beach and all that type of thing, but I am not getting in there. No way. But I went for a swim at the pool this morning. So those of you that are regular viewers will know that I've been doing adult swimming lessons, which is very cool. And last week I learnt how to tumble and how to dive. So I went for a swim this morning. So if you can see the big goggle marks still around my eyes and my face, then please just ignore it. And if water comes pouring out of my nose all of a sudden, then I apologise for that as well. We'll see. Sometimes it happens. I was trying to tumble and yeah, I didn't breathe out enough as I tumbled to turn around in the pool and I got a snoz full of water. I can still feel it in there. It's gonna just pour out any second. Hopefully it's like in between filming bits. Okay, whack some clips on there as well. And what we're going to do is pop this bit to the side for a minute. We're not going to sew this yet. So I'll get some clips on there. Pop that to the side. Oh, didn't put clips on that end. Kathy, I'm too busy talking about myself. Whack some clips on there just to hold it. Pop that bit to the side. And then we're going to take these bits over to the sewing machine. And what we're going to do is stitch down from this side. So where that fold is, we're going to have that side up at the sewing machine. And we're going to stitch at 1/8 of an inch along the top and then along that bottom folded edge on both pieces. Let's go do that. So my stitch length is around 3.5. And then my seam allowance here is 1/8 of an inch. Now I'm not going to watch my needle. I'm going to watch my fabric here as it lines up to that part of my foot. And that way I should be relatively straight. Back stitch a little bit and sew down this edge. Now you can see what I mean about using my sewing stiletto. Now it's just sort of helping guide and sort of keeping my fabric in place, and it stops me from being tempted to put my fingers anywhere near that needle. Because even with a little domestic machine like this one, you can do yourself some damage. So it really is a good idea to use one. And this thing is good for a heap of other things in the sewing room when you're sewing. So if you're curious about them, I do have another video up on them. It's just, I think the title is something like, what is a sewing stiletto? So you can go and watch that if you like after this one. So again, 1/8 of an inch all the way down, and I'll backstitch at the end, and then I'll do the other one exactly the same. And that is that part done. So now our pockets are done, and now we're going to attach them to our exterior piece. So I'm going to have my exterior piece right side up in front of me, and I'm going to find those center snips that we made to mark our centers. Take my long ruler, and I am going to measure up from those center snips 3.5 inches. If you don't have a long ruler like mine, just measure up 3.5 inches on either side from your snip and give yourself a mark. And then I'll give myself a line. So again, just join up your marks that you made. Then along that line that I just made, I am going to make a mark halfway. So 16.5 inches, I suck at math, but I think that's 8.25. So give myself a chalk mark at the 8.25 mark there. Flip it around and I'll do the same thing at the other center snip. So 3.5 inches from my center snip and give myself a line and then find the halfway point on there, which will be 8.25 inches, and give myself a chalk line. Too easy. Pop that to the side, grab one of my pockets, and I'm going to fold my pocket along that sewn edge and just give myself a tiny little snip like we did before along this bottom bit, along that folded side at the bottom, like that. And then place my pocket on there, lining up that snip with that mark that we made at the center there. And making sure that bottom bit is along the line so my pocket is nice and centered. Find my pins and I'll just bung a couple of pins in there towards the center, not right on the edge, just to hold that in place, like that. Too easy. Now grab my straps, found them. Now this is where I'm going to use a little bit of double-sided tape just to help me, because it'll just be a little bit easier than using the pins. So what I'm going to do is just lay some double-sided tape along the edge of my pocket there, and I won't use my good scissors. I'll find some old scissors. You don't want to be using good scissors to be cutting this tape, and lay that on both sides. Fabric scissors should only be for fabric. Don't use them for interfacing or especially tape or paper or anything like that, because it will just blunt them. And this tape is super sticky. Okay, take that off. Take that backing off. Now, if you don't have tape, I'll show you, you'll just use pins to put these on. It'll be fine. It's just a little bit quicker and a little bit easier. Okay, then grab my webbing, my strap, and lay my strap so it is half on the pocket and half on the exterior, because we're going to sew this down and this will hold our pocket in place. And it's just overhanging our line there just a little bit. It's not right on the edge. Make sure it's not twisted over anywhere so our strap lays nicely. And then down this end as well, making sure that it's half on the pocket and half on the exterior. So if you didn't have tape, you're just whacking a heap of pins there. I might pop a couple in anyway. Which way am I going to sew? That way. Pop a couple of them in there anyway, just to hold it like that. And a couple in the other side. And then I'll do exactly the same thing on the other end with the other pocket and other strap. And while I do that, I'm going to share some awesome news. I hit 50,000 subscribers yesterday, which is just so freaking exciting. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. I want to get that play button plaque when you get 100,000. That would be amazing. So yeah, 50,000, which is just so just amazing and just such a spin out for me. When I started this channel, not even 18 months ago, I was amazed when 30 people watched, one of my videos. So I'm just doing exactly the same thing. Fold my pocket in half, find my center, and lay that down, making sure that the folded over side where we top stitched it nicely is face up. So make sure your pocket is the right way so it looks pretty. A couple of pins in there. Yeah, when I started this, like June last year, I guess, I just never thought that it would end up being what it's being. And to have the wonderful community of you guys that I have, it's so fantastic for me, and I love doing this. It's the sort of thing that you do for the joy of it. Like at my sort of level, like I'm still a little channel compared to a lot of others. It's, not a whole lot of money or anything like that, but I really do appreciate all you guys being here with me every week and just making it fun and giving me a little bit of purpose in my life and being able to help others, because I just love teaching. And it's just, thank you. Thank you very much. So, and I'll stop there before I cry, because no one wants that. Okay, so just exactly the same thing as what we did before. Now, if you're wondering, this tape is it's fantastic and it's cheap. I'll go through so much of it. It's just off Temu. It's just a double-sided sort of crafting sticky tape that I found on Temu, and it's strong. It works so much better than the tape that I get from the fabric store or, Spotlight or anything like that. But when you're using double-sided tape, you really need to clean off your needle after you're done working that bit, because it will gum up your needle, and then you'll get skip stitches and all that type of pain in the butt thing that you don't want. So the way that you do that you clean it off, is to use an alcohol wipe. And again, you can get them from a pharmacy, some craft stores, I guess, but they do tend to be a little bit expensive from there. So I get them off Temu as well. And it's a couple of dollars for like over 100 of them. And when you clean off your needle, you just wipe it down, you just open the alcohol wipe, and then you just wipe your needle down. But do it with your machine off. I'm not your real mum, but I don't care. Don't touch your needle when the machine is on. Even if you think, you're being careful and whatever, accidents happen. And I can't count the amount of times that I've been sewing and I've stopped, and then my slipper has fallen over off my foot and hit the pedal and made the needle move. Or Lucy Purr's been cruising down around my feet trying to rub my ankles, and she's accidentally bumped the pedal and made the needle move. So there's always something. I mean, no one deliberately sews their finger, do they? It's always an accident. So you just want to make sure that you are as safe as you can be when you're doing anything, really. Okay, there's those. What we're going to do now is take it over to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew just up until about 1 inch from the top. So while I think of it, let's just give ourselves a little chalk line at the top here. Let's go 1.5, or let's actually go 2 inches, because we still need to sew that top and we don't want our stitches getting in the way. So I'm going to measure down 2 inches from the top of my exterior piece where it's still ironed over and folded over. So make sure it's still folded over where we ironed it. 2 inches down from the edge, and give myself a bit of a chalk line there on all of my handles. I'll just get those clips out of the way for a sec, and then we'll pop them back on. So make sure your strap is nice and straight, 2 inches down. And then when I pop my clips back on, I'm going to include that strap so that when I sew, my strap is nice and straight. I really should have a paperweight on there because it keeps escaping from me. Pop them on and pop that one on. Turn him around and same thing down this end. This is going to be so cute. I needed a new grocery bag. I lost my other one. I think I left it down the coast somewhere. I had a really cute one that I made with ducks on it. Okay, 2 inches there. Whack some pins on there. And then 2 inches on this side. Although on the on a beginner sewing page that I'm on, I read that, I think it was Canada, maybe, one of the sort of Western countries had banned plastic bags in supermarkets. So people were asking for grocery bag tutorials. And we don't have plastic bags here anymore in Australia either. So it's always good to have grocery bags in your car so you're not paying for the paper ones. Okay, that is that done. So we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch up and then across and then back down. And then I'm going to come back and just do a little X in that. Actually, let's make another line. Sorry. From that first line, we're going to measure another inch there so that we can sew ourselves a little X in there. And it's just going to reinforce it a little bit because we don't want our eggs falling out of our grocery bag because they're bloody expensive enough without smashing them on the ground. So 1 inch down from that existing line. So I've got a little box there. So we'll sew up to the top one and then back down, and then up in this little box, we'll just do a little X on all 4 sides. But I'll show you at the sewing machine. Now, because my webbing is white, I've swapped out to a white thread because this bit, when we do our little X at the top, can look a little bit messy. So you want it to blend in. So I'm 1/8 of an inch from the edge of my webbing and my stitch length is still that 3.5 or so. I'll back stitch here. And then, like I said, I'm just going to carefully work my way up to that second line, not the first one, the second one. Careful over this thick bit, nice and slow. Okay, up to this second one, and I'll leave my needle in my work, maybe 1 more stitch there. Leave my needle down so when I pivot, my strap doesn't move. Across that line and then back down the other side. Needle down, move all this bag around. Sorry if it gets in the face of the camera, I'll do my best. And then down. And then we'll come back up and do that X. And my machine that I'm using today is my Singer 340, I think it is. 430 or 340, one of them. If you're curious, I have a video up on it as well, just doing a bit of a review. It's a very nice little machine. Okay, so that's that bit. Let's go back up to the top. And I'm just going to start in that top corner and aim down for this bottom corner. Little back stitch though. And little back stitch there. And then start in that corner and aim up to the other one. Back stitch and then across. Now using that double-sided sticky tape, I can actually hear my machine that my needle is a bit sticky. So if you did do it like me, don't forget to wipe it off. Okay, I will do all 4 exactly like that. And that is the last one, I think. Okay, we're good to go back over. So there's our straps sewn on. Now we're going to pop this piece to the side for just a sec, and we're going to grab the base piece. So what we're going to do is work on the wrong side. So I think that's that side, the rougher side. Grab my ruler, and I'm going to measure up along one of the longer edges, one of the 16.5-inch sides. I'm going to measure up 1/2 inch, give myself a line, spin it round. Same thing on this side, 1/2 inch, and give myself a line. Then we're going to iron those down. So I will move my mats and get my iron set up. So same thing as what we did before. I'm just going to fold up my fabric at that 1/2 inch line and press it down into place on both sides, like that. And again, I've moved my mat because I don't want it to buckle any more than what I've already managed to buckle it. And then this side. And this is going to be the base of our bag. And it's going to add a bit of an accent colour, so a bit of, decorative type thing as well. But it's going to give the bottom of our bag a little bit more durability. Turn that off. So now I'll grab my exterior bit and have it laying right side up. So make sure all my pins are gone. And with this piece now, I'm going to fold it in half along the short edge, find my centers, give myself a little snip. And then this side, fold it in half along the shorter edge, so these ironed over bits are sitting together. Little snip. Cool. Now place it right side up so the folded edges are underneath, over our bag, lining up those center snips. And then I'll whack some clips along the short edges to hold it. And then we'll bung some pins in along the top edge. And I'll try and practice my pin work. I really do need to. Hopeless. But if you've got all your measurements right and you followed along, this bottom bit should be overhanging your pocket a bit. So this is what sort of finishes off the bottom of that pocket and the bottom of those straps, which is good because it means that we're sewing over those straps again. So to make them a little bit stronger. Okay, pop my pins in and I'll make sure that they're all laying in the same direction. They're all pointing in the same direction. So it's easier at the sewing machine to pull them out as I go. Because like I said, I'm terrible. I'm terrible with clips too. Like if you've watched some of my videos, I always put some on facing the right way and some facing the wrong way. And it's just, my brain goes a million miles an hour, especially when I'm trying to think what I'm doing and film at the same time. So I'm practicing being mindful and just slowing my roll a little bit and taking my time. Okay, and then some on this side. Put my pins in the opposite direction to these ones. Not that, don't worry too much about that if you're not understanding what I mean, if you're a beginner. So yeah, I was inspired to do this bag by someone on the that beginner sewing group that I'm on. Paul. Paul is a bag maker, and he had made himself some grocery bags out of pillowcases. So, which I thought was a bit clever. But if you're using something like fabric, like a pillowcase, you don't want to make them too big, but his were quite good. And he was saying that, I'm pretty sure it was Paul that was saying that plastic bags had been outlawed. So yeah, good idea to do grocery bags. Okay, now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we are just going to stitch along those edges. Same thing, same stitch length, around 3.5 or so, and around 1/8 of an inch. So I've swapped back over to my pink thread and I'm 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And see how I've got my pins, so the sharp bit is pointed towards the foot. That makes it easier to pull them out as I sew. And I really should have my pin cushion over here because I'm going to be so tempted to put them in my mouth, and that's naughty too. So it just makes them easier. If you have the ball facing towards the presser foot, then you're pulling them out that way, and that's just really awkward. So there's just a little tip for the newer people. Just keep smoothing that out and making sure that's not bunched up underneath and I'm not sewing over my actual bag anywhere. And you know I usually put them in my mouth. So naughty. Okay, just like that. And when I get to this end, I will backstitch and then I'll do the other side exactly the same. Okay, don't forget to backstitch there. And that is that bit done. Now we're going to add our lining. So I'm going to have my exterior piece wrong side up in front of me, like that. Grab my lining piece and I'm going to find the wrong side. So again, with this fabric being the same color, it's really difficult, but if you've got a print, it'll be easy. But I think the wrong side just looks a little bit more linty. So place them wrong sides together. So the prettier side of this fabric is facing up. And smooth that out, get it as even as I can. And then just fold that down, pop my clips off, and I'm going to lift up that folded edge, just at the 1 inch line, poke my lining down in there, and then fold that over again and whack my clips back on there, like that. So now our lining is included. Smooth that down, pop my clips off this end, lift up that ironed over bit to the 1 inch line, pop that under, fold it back over and pop my clips back on there, like that. Now we're going to take it back over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew that the same way as what we did our pockets before. So we're going to sew along that top edge first and then sew along that edge on both sides. And I will change my thread back over to the white so we don't see it. So everything is the same on my machine. I'm still at 3.5 mil stitch length and I'm at 1/8 of an inch again. I'm going to back stitch along there and make sure that you're working from the lining side or the wrong side of your bag so that you can see the lining and see our folded over bit. Nice and slow over that strap. Trying to keep it nice and straight so it's not too wonky. And my machine sounds a bit better after I cleaned off that needle with an alcohol wipe. So when you're having needle problems, you can usually hear it. So if you start to hear like a thunking noise or something like that when you're sewing, it's usually an indication that your needle has gone dull. Needles need to be nice and sharp for them to work properly. So if it starts to sound heavy or like a thunking or something like that, then just change your needle over. All the way to the end. And then back stitch a little bit there. And then go back over to the beginning and do that bottom edge. Needle down. Don't forget to back stitch, even though that side's going to be sewn over again, but it's just a good habit. So your needle should be changed around every 8 hours of sewing. So I usually do it per project, even though a project might not actually be 8 hours of sewing. I just know that if I start a fresh project with a fresh needle, then I'm less likely to run into trouble as I'm sewing and less likely to get skipped stitches and all that type of thing. And needles really aren't all that expensive. So to save myself the headache of unpicking, it's just easier to do that. All right, I will do the other side exactly the same. Okay, and then back stitch there. Cool bananas. So there's our lining in. Now what we're going to do is start working on the sides. So I'm going to have it wrong side up, fold it in half, so it's now right side up. Line up my top edges as best I can. Now what we're going to do is called French seams. And it sounds a little bit fancy, but it's not scary, I promise. Smooth it all out. Get those top edges lined up. Oh, it's bath time. This cat over-grooms. She's such a groomer. She'll jump on my lap and just groom and groom and groom, and then she's just this big, wet, very soggy mess. It's a good thing she's cute. Okay, and then smooth all that down. Make sure it's all nice and even. Hopefully that means our panels are pretty lined up on either side. And then whack some clips down the side as well. So it might seem weird that we're sewing down the sides while our bag is right side out, but trust me, we'll French seam it and it'll be perfect. Well, it'll look good anyway. And this also adds a little bit more strength and durability to our seams so that we can, confidently carry stuff in there. Righto, let's take that over to the sewing machine and we're just going to stitch down these sides at a little bit wider seam allowance. This time we're going to be around 3/8, around 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, just so you're confident that you are catching both sides of your exterior and lining as we go. So like I said, we're a little bit wider this time in our seam allowance. We just want to make sure that we are catching both sides. We're starting at the top and we're back stitching. So I'm taking my seam allowance off my exterior bit. See how my lining is a little bit bigger and overhanging, just where it wasn't cut quite as straight as the exterior. I'm basing my seam allowance off the smaller piece of the exterior. If you're wondering about that yourself as you sew. And just going to work my way all the way down. Now, if I do miss a little bit on the other side, if I finish and then I find that on this side, I might have missed just a half an inch or so of the exterior. Don't worry too much about it. You can go back over it and go a little bit wider with your seam allowance. But like I said, we are going to sew this again to make it stronger. So just don't drive yourself nuts over it. Do the very best that you can and it'll all be sweet. All right, back stitch down here, and then I'll do the other side exactly the same. Okay, back stitch, done. Get rid of those extra clips and I'll check and see how I went. And it looks like I grabbed both sides all the way down, which is good. Now I'm going to grab my nice sharp scissors and I'm going to trim off any excess. So I'm going to get nice and close to those stitches, probably around 1/8 of an inch away from those stitches. Being careful not to actually cut into the stitches because that would suck. We don't want to do that. I just want to get nice and close. Lucy Purr, I can actually hear you. Sorry if you can hear my cat. She likes to groom. She likes to be clean. Okay, that's one side. And then this side. I suppose it's better than if she didn't groom herself at all, I guess. She was not happy with me when we went down the coast. Oh man, the poor bugger. She had to go into the kennel. She hates the kennel and I hate leaving her there. But I'm too scared to get a house sitter, like a cat sitter, a pet sitter. Because I'm just scared that they'll accidentally let her outside or something. And I won't be able to find her. Okay, let's turn this inside out now. And poke out these corners. So this is another good thing that these sewing stilettos, the little purple thing, THANG, are good for. It's just really poking out corners. And that one, you don't want to use a metal one. We don't want to use a metal one anyway because it'll go like through your fabric. But if you use a metal one at the sewing machine, then the whole idea of using a sewing stiletto is that you don't get your fingers near the needle. So you don't want to use a metal one because if you hit a metal sewing stiletto with your needle, it's going to shatter. It's going to shatter your needle and possibly the sewing stiletto. So yeah, always best to use a plastic one. Okay, smooth that out. Now I'm just going to, and I'll do it off camera because you don't need to see me do that. I'm sure you can manage. I'm just going to iron down this edge nice and flat. So iron down my seams nice and flat, and I'll give the rest of it a little bit of a hit with the iron too, just to make sure that everything is sitting nicely, and then I'll be back. So I'm nice and ironed down, nice and flat on my seams, and I'll just whack some clips along there as well, just to help it stay in place as that fabric cools down. Then we're going to take it back over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch down along this edge. Same as what we did a minute ago, except this time we're on the inside. And that is what French seams are, because that seam will hide the raw edge of the other one that we just did, and then we've got double the strength. So we'll go a little bit wider to make sure that we're catching that seam. We'll be going around 3/8 of an inch, and we'll start at the top and work our way to the bottom. Let's go do that bit. So like I said, I'm starting at the top and I'm a little bit wide. I'm around 3/8 of an inch again. And I'm going nice and slow because there's a little bit of bulk up there. We've got a few layers, especially at that top edge. So just be kind to your sewing machine and go a bit slow. Okay, and I'll just work my way all the way down, and then when I do the other side, I'll start at the top and do the same thing. Okay, that is our sides French seamed. So that's what a French seam is. Let's turn it out the other way and have a look and see whether or not I caught both sides of that seam on the other side all the way down. Fingers crossed, hopefully. But if you didn't, if you find when you turn it out and you look at this seam, if there's any threads poking through or you can sort of see where that other one was, just turn it back out inside out, take it back to the sewing machine and just go again and just widen your stitch, your seam allowance a little bit more. Because we've come too far to leave it not looking good. But it looks like I caught mine all the way down, which is cool. Okay, so now we're not quite done. We're going to box the bottom corners so that our bag has a nice wide base. So what I'm going to do, now that I've got it right side out, is open it up sideways like that and place it sideways so that my seams, hard to say with the lisp, my seams are sitting together like that. So stick my hand in there, open that up a little bit. So my seams are laying together. Flip it around this way and I'll just pop that piece up. So I've got this bottom corner. Now it all looks a bit weird, but if you need to, just watch that a few more times and you'll see what I mean. So I'm working on one of my bottom corners, but it's diagonal, okay? Cool. Grab my ruler and I am going to measure up 1.5 inches from this bottom point. So from this bottom point here, I'm going to place like a cross bit of my ruler there and measure up 1.5 inches. And just make sure that you've got, you're not on a crazy angle like that, that it's pretty much straight across at 1.5. Then I will flip my bag back down like that, turn it over, flip this bit up, and then grab this side. And I'll just smooth all that out so it's a little bit more even than what that is sitting right now. So that my seam, or actually let's just flip it over. Flip it over that way so you can see a bit better. So that I can see the seam and that the seam is laying down the middle. Okay, grab my ruler and again 1.5 inches. So I'm lining up my 1.5 inch mark right on that point and I've got that line going up the seam like that. And give myself a chalk mark there, like that. And I'll whack some clips on there just to hold it and I'll whack some on the other side as well. And then we're going to take that over to the sewing machine and we are just going to sew along that line. If you need a hump jump to get yourself over that seam, then make sure you've got one handy. If you don't have a hump jump, and I can't see mine, but I will find it, you can just fold up a piece of fabric into a little like square with a few layers to help you. But I'll show you what I mean over at the sewing machine if you're unsure of what I'm talking about. Okay, so just sewing across that chalk line. Get my clips out of the way, have it all laying nice and flat. And I've got my hump jump handy because we've got a few layers there. So I don't think I'll need it, but I'll show you anyway. I'm going to lift up the back, and this is my hump jump. I'm going to place it under the back of my presser foot, pop my foot back down, and that will help me just get up and over that bulky seam like that. Back stitch, and I'll do the other one exactly the same. Back stitch. Cool. So I'm an idiot and didn't hit record then when I got back to the table. But what I did was what we did on the sides. I've just gone ahead and just trimmed off that excess fabric where my corner was. So I've just gone snip and snipped off that corner bit below our stitches. I was going so well today too. Bugger. Okay, now turn it inside out and we're going to French seam it the way that we did the sides. So poke those corners out. And I was just congratulating myself in my head for being mindful and taking one step at a time. Oh, idiot Kathy. Okay, I'm just going to go off camera again and just iron these seams flat and I'll be back. So I've ironed those seams flat and now I'm just going to do the same thing as before. I'm just going to whack some clips on there just to hold that in place. There's a heap of sirens going past, so I'm sorry every dog in the neighbourhood is about to start howling, I'm sure. Oh, that's noisy. Off they go. Someone's having a bad day. Okay, so whack some clips on there. Now we're going to do the same thing. Take that back over to the sewing machine and just sew down along that edge at 3/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to fix my squeaky chair. So like I said, we're about 3/8 of an inch and I'm sewing on the side where the seam isn't so that it will help that seam lay a little bit flatter and just help my foot get up and over it a little bit easier. And just sew straight across, and when I get to where that seam is, if I need to, I'll lift up, place my hump jump under the back, just lift that lever again for a little bit more clearance. There we go. And pop that all the way down over that seam, and then I'll do the other side the same and see you guys back over at the table. Don't forget to backstitch. So there's our boxed corners all French seamed. Let's turn it out and see how we went. That was the last bit. We are done. That is exciting. So again, just make sure that you caught the seam all the way across. And if you didn't, if any bits are poking through, take it back over and just widen the seam allowance a little bit. You want it to look good after you've gone to all this trouble. But mine are looking all right and we are done. There we go. There is our grocery bag. We've got that nice wide bottom and we've got our pockets and our lining. And if this is the first time that you've made something like this, you should be super proud of yourself right now. You should be showing everyone. And I am loving that. Even if you're a more experienced sewer and you come along for the ride with me today, then thanks for watching, thanks for making it, and most of all, thank you to everyone that has subscribed to my channel and that has helped me get to that 50,000 mark. It is just so amazing. I'm going to have a cake tonight to celebrate, a little bit of cake. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so and helping me get a little bit closer to that 100,000 subscriber mark and that play button, which I have my eyes on. I want it so bad. Okay, guys, that's it for today. It's nap time. We're going inside and having a lay down. Until next time, remember, it's only fabric. We can always buy more, and we will see you next week. Have a good one, peeps. See ya. Bugger.